Up the top of the league, Toffees, Everton are back at the summit of the Premier League table. 5 wins from 5 in 2021. Dominic Calvert and Richarlison on the score sheet. James Rodriguez taking the piss yet again. The Blues are very much the business under Carlo Ancelotti at the moment. Won 2-1 at Crystal Palace today. Joining me to have a chat about it. Dave Downey and Mike Greenall, as advertised, and Rob Vera, after Everton won today, shamelessly decided he wanted to come on the podcast. On Everton's success at the moment. We are on YouTube Live as well, so let us know your thoughts. What did you make of that performance today? Who are your standout players? All that kind of thing. What are you doing tonight? Just to enjoy it, the Blues being top of the table. But I'll come to you first on this one, Mike. Such a battle that, wasn't it? Probably the hardest hard-fought win we've had for a long, long time.
Yeah, it was a tough watch in the second half, wasn't it? Especially, I think we got through it in the end, but I think there was a period, especially after the hour mark, really, where, I hate saying we dug in and stuff like that, but we did, and we won a game in the past. We probably wouldn't have won that last year, would we? No.
I think that's fair enough, isn't it, Dave? It's, I think there's just moments in the game, which late on, for example, where there's one where Doucoure got back and nicked the ball from Zaha, and you thought we didn't have that player last year. There's one moment which really stands out for me when Palace were really ramping the pressure up, and Rodriguez just got the ball on the right-hand side. He had about 3 players around him, but he just kept his composure, looked up, found the pass, and it just released the entire 5 minutes of pressure. And albeit we were deep and heading and kicking balls away, I think in those last few minutes, our game management was spot on. And the individual players in those situations really seemed to make the right decision.
I thought it was really strange because I felt we had more control and were more comfortable as those last 15, 20 minutes wore on. I felt the middle of the game in the second half, I think Palace were outstanding, I have to say. I thought, they'll come away and probably justifiably so. Roy Hodgson will say they deserve something from that game, and I'm hard pressed to agree, but I think that's probably right. I thought Palace did enough aside from creating that goal scoring opportunity. You look at the goal we scored to open it up, Matt. It was absolutely outstanding, and I think Everton are quickly becoming a side that type of side. The game could be going in any direction, but they find that odd moment where something like that can turn it on its head. When you've got a player like Rodriguez, I think that's always possible. And there's a reason why he stays on the pitch despite looking like he was blown out of his arse after an hour, is because there was a beautiful, beautiful moment in the first half, and I'm sure somebody's clipped it up already, where he has the ball near side, halfway line, and the game pretty much stops because Palace are petrified of what he's going to do with the ball. They all backed off him, and he just essentially stood there. It actually reminded me of that game when Wayne Rooney put his hands on his hips against West Brom all those years ago, and it was just a thoroughly piss-taking moment. It was absolutely stunning. But yeah, to go back to your point, I think there was very little that was composed about, as I felt, particularly in the second half. I always felt we might have another goal in us, and I think Calvert-Lewin should probably stick one of his 2 chances away to ease that pressure. But I said to you just before we come on, I don't think there's a more satisfying type of victory in a game of football than one that is scarcely deserved and is rugged and disjointed and it asks all the questions you don't like to answer as a football team, where you need steel, you need a bit of guile, you need to run the clock down when you can. And we looked like we were experts at doing that, whereas in the past, I felt that we were just so naive to those situations, and this looked like a different Everton that was stood up to be countered. Everybody played their part. You look at Alan. If you could wrap up that type of game in a nutshell, you probably come up with a vision of Alan's face on a crystal ball, because that is exactly the type of thing I think he's been brought in to do, and he will relish going forward. It was his game for me towards the end of that, and the fullbacks were absolutely outstanding, and it was just an incredible team effort in the most unconventional ways possible. That's the way I'd probably sum it up, Matt.
Rob, and coming to you as well, as the one who jumped on the podcast after Everton won, we have to say. But in all seriousness, it's we've been talking all week about throwing ourselves into this and being positive and being excited about this team. And we sort of, when we do these shows, I sort of always get to Saturday and think, is this the one where we're all going to look a bit stupid and a bit silly? But it's just beyond the result and the performance today, it's just great, isn't it, that we can we've got all weekend to be happy about this. We've got all next week to be excited about it. We're welcoming a Brighton side to Goodison Park next week who've had a proper gut punch today. And you're thinking, when are we going to lose a football match?
I'll tell you when, but I don't want to say.
Well, look, it'll happen eventually. But as we've talked about, like, let's enjoy this. We're winning. We're winning on the road. We're winning tough games. We're scoring goals. We're creating chances. And I would say in a game like this, especially, what I find really encouraging is that we are proving that even when we have periods where we're wobbling a little bit, or periods where, we're not as sharp as we need to be, we're finding a way to gut it out. I mean, I don't know how you could be anything but ecstatic about what we've seen so far. We have plenty of time to worry about everything down the road, but for right now, we have earned this happiness. And Matt, to your point about me jumping on, I've certainly been on plenty of post matches after we've lost. So, and unless, hey, I called 2-1 today and we got it. And so I'm like, yeah, of course I want to jump on. But the thing that stuck out for me, because I know how that second half felt, and it felt like a lot of hanging on. But I think that really wasn't because we were playing poorly defensively and, just giving them loads of chances, as much as it was that we were not creating enough and holding onto the ball enough, too many turnovers and so on. But, look, I don't want to oversimplify it. I'm going to leave the advanced metrics to guys like Michael, but Palace had one shot on goal, other than the corner. And, I guess you could make the case that Keane or Richarlison could have maybe handled that ball in a little better. I just thought it was a great corner and a great goal that Palace scored, more than I really want to blame anyone for it. But I don't know how anyone can really fault the defense, given that we held them to one shot. Zaha, I expected Zaha to run wild today. I barely noticed him the entire game. I think that we were physical. I really enjoyed it. And again, there were periods where there were players who had their wobbling periods. They weren't playing, they would be good and then they wouldn't, and so on. They had to kind of collectively gut it out, and they did so today. Yeah,
like I said, we are live on YouTube. If you're watching it, let us know your thoughts on the game, etc. Just sort of going back to that first half, Mike, as well. I think it's sort of the encouraging thing for me is that I think Everton were pretty much in first and second gear for a lot of that game, and you still finished the half with 2 goals. And they've now got, certainly with players like Rodriguez and obviously with Calvert-Lewin, it feels like we've got players that even when the general pattern of the game is Everton being a little bit stodgy in midfield, the links aren't quite there in the final third, that all of a sudden with one swing of Rodriguez's weaker right foot, it's got to be said, you're in and you've got a predatory striker now, and that's encouraging, isn't it? That you can you've got players that can sort of elevate their attack and play above the level of what the game is.
Well, yeah, I think even with the signings in general, that's the main thing to take from it. Like, I think overall today, I thought we were pretty poor. And I thought we were pretty poor in the first half last week against West Brom. And we scored 4 goals over like 2 halves today in the first half yesterday. And, we're sitting here going, in performance-wise, we were fairly underwhelming, but we still created chances. We still looked relatively solid at the back. You can't control games for 90 minutes, especially away from home. And I think but we didn't crumble. We didn't really, Rob's mentioned there, Zaha was effectively, especially in the second half, we didn't really notice him. I thought Coleman did all right on the right. Dean was fine on the left. Mina, he had his odd moments in the second half. But I thought, individually, defensively, we were sound. And when we went forward, there's a sense really that, we're going to create a chance every time we go forward now. And if we're not going to create a chance, we'll get a corner out of it. Or, the levels have been raised now where performing badly this season was, in a sense where that was our good performance last year. Yeah. We come off today last season, be like, we've won the game, we played really well, we scored 2 goals, but we're sat here really, and we know we could have done better today, and we still scored twice. Calvert-Lewin could have scored again. And I think when you look at the bigger picture, it's these type of games that will be the difference in finishing 8th or 9th or 6th or 5th. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's a great way of putting it, isn't it, Dave? All of a sudden standards feel like they've been lifted all in the team. And And Rodriguez epitomises that, doesn't he? You know, the saying in one of the group chats there that was probably his worst game for us today out the three, and he's still been decisive in both goals and strolled around taking the piss for long portions of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I've no idea who got man of the match. And you're right, I think it was his poorest game for us, but I don't think that was a game or a day for him, to be honest with you, because there was so much of that game, so many large portions of that game, that it was difficult to get him into it. Don't get me wrong, when he got the ball, he was still superb. He retained possession. There was a point quite getting on towards the end, might have been midway through the second half, where he takes about 5 of their players out, playing a neat little ball into midfield after he skinned a couple of them, and Everton were on the counter attack. There were still glimpses of that, but and what's refreshing about that is I don't think he shirked away from that, his physical responsibility in the game either, because you know, we know from the off we're not going to get a player who's going to track back. We're not going to get a Richarlison out of him and what he does, but that's not what he's in the team to do. Richarlison does that as an added bonus to the quality he possesses going forwards. Rodriguez is all about making an impact at the other end of the pitch, isn't he? And he still, I think, a couple of times did track back. He got in front of any Palace attack. He just put his body there, to be honest with you, and he won a couple of challenges as well, which was nice to see. I suppose the only reservation you have when you sign a player like that is, are they willing to go that extra mile when things do get tough? And today got tough, and he did that. I thought he was a really responsible performance. The other thing as well, when you get players in a game that it doesn't fall for them, or you're in, you know, more of an attritional type of match, in a scruffy one, that when they get the ball, they tend to try the outrageous just because it's frustrating them and it's not their type of game. He didn't do that. He wasn't wasteful with the ball. He didn't try ridiculous cutting edge passes all day long. Ali McCoist was drooling, wasn't he, at the ball that got flicked out at pace, and he just brings it down, loops over someone's head again. And I think Palace won it back quite luckily, to be honest. But yeah, that level of performance when the chips are down and not everything's going your way are invaluable. And like I said before we come on, I think it was more for a day of Alans and Seamus Coleman's and Michael Keane's than it was for the Rodriguez, or Richarlison, or Calvert-Lewin to a certain extent. And but equally, though, all of those fit into those performances. Look, if you ask certain players to flog themselves in a game that isn't suited to their talents, then it's a big ask, I think, in this day and age, because senior players like Rodriguez, will always want to wait to try and do the sublime and do what they're there to do. But when they're asked to do that with the difficult side of things, you don't always get a kick out of them. And I think credit to everyone today for being able to put up such a resistance against a physical Crystal Palace side. I mean, there are a couple of iffy ones. I thought Zaha probably should have saw red, to be honest, because that was horrendous what he tried to do to Calvert-Lewin when he was running forward.
It was Yerry Mina, wasn't it?
It was Yerry Mina.
Sorry, yeah, it was Mina, yeah. And it just the action that what he actually tries to do is completely missed by the commentary team and any sort of analysis on Amazon. But he essentially tries to take his legs by raising his studs and going sort of through the back of him. And he manages to do so, but doesn't make full contact. And I think that's what escapes him from getting a red card. And people say, McCoist saying that's harsh. I think he just sort of gets his body in the way. It's blatantly obvious if you watch it again what he's trying to do, and the intent is there. I thought that was a red card. And yet, but also him being a case in point as well. I mean, Mike mentioned the hilarity of what he can be sometimes when he tries to head the ball twice when it's on the floor. Ends up handballing it, and I'm like, what's going on here? All from a pretty innocuous slip where he gets flat-footed is him in a nutshell, isn't it? But nonetheless, he made some crucial headers towards the game.
I thought he played well main today.
I mean, I messaged you guys on our WhatsApp group, and I said he's a liability only because those moments of just outrage and those moments of like, what are you doing, are always going to be there, I think. But when he was asked to do conventional defending, like heading the ball away, physical challenge of Benteke, when he come on, he rose to the challenge, and I think he headed everything that came his way in those last 15. That's what I mean, reinforcing the point I made, Matt. Towards the end of the game, I felt we were much more comfortable because Palace went direct, and he's the exact type of defender alongside Keane who were happy to do that all day long.
Yeah, Matt, I want to throw one thing in on that. The tweet that just came from Matt Cheatham I thought was amazing. the only time Wilfred Zaha has failed to dribble around a single opponent in a Premier League game last 4 seasons. You know, I see what Dave is saying too, because when he has his moments, it's something about his awkward body language that just makes it funny, you know, at times. And I think that no one has a sense of humor about himself more than Yerry Mina, which is why he's been able to stick around and get to the level that he's at. But I think you're squinting. I know that there are some players that, and we've done this for years with certain players, some of them deservedly so, that there is a particular narrative that's been made out of, and so therefore you see everything through that lens. But I'll be interested to see what the final stats look like today. But look, I'm not claiming anyone was perfect, but I think you'd have a hard time, again, finding much fault with the defensive effort today. And that was all around, certainly. But, you know, I thought the back four were good. I thought Seamus Coleman did well. I don't really, I mean, again, I think we can find issues, but for me, most of the issues today, in the second half especially, were more of, in some ways, of our own making. I mean, Palace have some talented players that can, you know, pressure and get the ball, and they can create, I don't even know if I'd say chances, because they didn't really have a lot of great chances in the second half, if any. But what they did was, you know, use their athleticism, apply pressure to Everton, and our midfield at times didn't handle it as well as they could have in terms of holding on to the ball. But it seemed at every moment, whether it was, you know, a Doucoure tracking back, it was Keane and Mina sticking their heads in at the back. I mean, it just felt at times like we weren't great with the ball, but, you know, off the ball, we seemed to have an answer that really was generated by the fact that there was just maximum commitment and effort today.
Yeah, 100%. Anyone got any strong thoughts on the penalty?
Yeah, it was a penalty. It was a penalty.
It was a pen, Dave, yeah?
Stonewall penalty. And I'll tell you why. Because I've seen a lot of people saying, even a lot of our fans saying there's no way that's a penalty. It's a penalty because he has to move his hand to hit the ball. I understand when people are talking about, yeah, it's to keep his balance and he's still in a natural position. But if you read those rules Amazon put up at half time, one of them states your hands can't be outside the line of your body. If you look at what happens to Joe Wood, yes, it comes at him quickly, but his arm sort of tilts towards the ball. And that to me is a movement towards the ball. As unlucky as it is, as unfortunate it is for him, I thought modern day, that is a stonewall penalty. And lest we forget, I think many people might enjoy me saying this, how many times have we been on the end of decisions like that? And I know,
yes.
I know that's purely subjective to every club who'd have, you know, every reason. Even Man United, who get a penalty every week, would say they get on the wrong end of their fair share of VAR decisions. But for once, it fell our way, and that sort of thing, Matt. And you know what I'm like. I'm quite emotional and quite. I look to the stars sometimes for reasons why things happen, and you think Everton getting a decision like that. When does that happen? So you know, maybe there's something bigger and better on the cards for us this season. We've made this great start, but yeah, it's a stonewall penalty for me in today's day and age. And fair play, I can't believe I'm saying this, to Kevin Friend, because it's presented to him and he has to go against his own decision that it wasn't a penalty in the first instance. The other one he got spot on as well, by the way, the original one where I think it might have been, was it Ward again, where he has his hands almost like behind his back and the ball hits then. That I have complete sympathy with, and he made the right decision there. With that other one, when the one we actually got, where he's actually facing the play, he's facing the ball, and yes, okay, he's not intended to hit it, but his arm moves into the line of the ball. That's a penalty, the way the rules are these days, and I don't make them, but I'm enjoying them right now.
Mike, you were nodding there when I asked that question as well. Do you think it was a penalty, mate?
Yeah, I think absolutely. You know, as far as I was concerned, I don't think as long as it hits the hand, I thought it was a penalty now. As long as it doesn't hit the sleeve, I thought.
If your hands away from your body, if your hands away from your body and it's below the sleeve, like a short sleeve, isn't it? I mean, I'm not really sure what it is anymore.
Well, that's why you see a lot of defenders go with their hands behind the back, you know, when they're trying to close down the cross. Because that used to be, it happened in Spain one year, and they changed the rule, didn't he? Where it was literally that if it touches your hand, regardless of any context, it's a penalty. And all the players in Spain started sort of aiming for people's hands. You know, that sort of waist-high cross, they'd all start doing that sort of thing. So everybody started putting their hands behind the back. But listen, we're not going to complain about the rules, are we? Because they get us enough, don't they? And they have done in recent times.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add to what was said here is just that we shouldn't conflate how we feel about the rule or the technical aspects of the rule versus the application of it. Over here the commentary at halftime was quite different in terms of Robbie Mustoe came on at halftime and basically made the point that you had a situation where he's like, I don't really like this rule, but it is absolutely the fair application of it. There was some shout, and I'd be curious as to what the commentary was like there, that Calvert-Lewin, the review on him in the box, that the commentary team was going crazy saying that was more of a penalty than what Ward got. And I thought that it kind of hit his kind of upper arm with it close to his body or the crook of his elbow.
It was in the chest first, I think, that one, didn't it? And then went onto his arm.
It is his arm. It hit somewhere in between, maybe a bit of both. But the issue there is, and again, bringing the actual rule into play, he's actually tried to make his body smaller because he's brought both of his arms in. So he's deliberately trying to avoid contact with the ball. Unless we forget, you bring your arms in that narrow, it's going to hit him anyway, if his arm's there or not. So he's got a natural silhouette, I think is what they call it. So that's never a penalty at all. And it's not often I sort of get weighed in on those controversial refereing decisions, because I'd like to think I'd call it either way. But having said that, if I was a Palace fan or if that happened to us, I would be absolutely seething.
Well, I mean, let's be honest, the instant reaction is definitely the place for biased analysis, isn't it? But just before we wrap up, I want to speak about two players in particular who I thought had really interesting games, and that's Andre Gomes and Abdoulaye Doucoure. And I think it was really interesting for me, Mike, that it was sort of Gomes started the game really well. He was using the ball. I think he plays a great pass out in the build to our first goal. He was physical, loved the battle. Doucoure, on the other hand, didn't quite get into the game. It took him, a bit more time. But what I really liked about it was you sort of had the class and quality of Gomes early on, and he was dictating the play for us. And then in the second half, when the game became a little bit different and more frantic, and Gomes was getting a bit tired, it felt like Doucoure's attributes took over then. There's that charge back where he wins the ball from Zaha. And I just think the extra bit of time he got on the ball late on, the way he could carry it forward, got us out of a lot of issues late on in the game. And I just thought that balance was really nice. And it was great to see both of them sort of stamp their authority on the match at different times in the game in different ways.
Yeah, anyone who follows me on Twitter, anything, I'm not Gomez's biggest fan, but I thought he was really good in the first half. He was the one he played a little diag, didn't he, just before the goal, and I thought, I mentioned it yesterday that if we're going to have any joy attacking wise, it'll be down Palace's right side and our left side. And I think him, Dean, and Richarlison really had, first half especially, had a lot of fun down that side, and Gomes was a big part of that. He was the one, because Doucoure I thought was quite poor first half, and second half it was more of his game. Where it's not pretty, but if the hard work needs to be done, sometimes you just need to run around and get stuck in. Doucoure did that second half. First half, I thought he was pretty. I thought he just weren't really involved. But whereas Gomes was, and it kind of switched around the second half, where it wasn't Gomez's game, but it was Doucoure's, and they balance each other out, and that's the joy of having three midfielders. Really, if one of them isn't going to be involved, or one of them's having a bit of an off day, you've got two others really who can step up, and you don't really notice that much of a difference. And I thought we saw that today.
Dave, I've seen you tweet about Doucoure saying you thought he looked a bit off it. That was midway through the first half, but he definitely got better as it went on, didn't he?
Yeah, I just thought it was one of those days you see often where players just seem to, well, yeah, like I said, have an off day, and his touch wasn't there when he was getting balls fired into him, sort of knock it a couple of yards too far ahead of himself, and it would force him to make a difficult pass, which invariably would go astray. And Mike's absolutely spot on. I think as the game went on, it very much become his forte. Essentially, when it got a little bit stretched, and that fantastic recovery with Zaha, I think we're going to see that most games this season, because that's what he seems to like. He seems to relish the challenge of getting in a foot race with these quick players, and essentially he gave Zaha a head start and caught up with him and backtracked and tackled him superbly, and that was fantastic. But the beauty of it, Matt, I think what it underlines is, and I think I said this after our first game against Tottenham, the facet to this team now is we can afford to have somebody having an off day. We can afford to have 2 or 3 players perhaps not giving it the 7 or 8 or 9 out of 10s because we have others who do step up. And that's what happened today. I think when somebody has an off day, it's very much a team effort. And that's something that we have been really heavily critical about with this side in the past. Even Gylfi Sigurdsson, when he came on, looked like Zidane for 5 minutes. He beat about 4 or 5 players in their corner. One was a really useful free kick. And that's the type of energy that you feel with this side right now. It's like I said, even in an attacking sense, if one of them doesn't get you, then somebody else will. And it seems like we have layers to this now where, you know, it's like you've got a collective who are all fighting for each other. And it's the type of thing where if someone plays a pass astray, everyone will say, come on, let's get back into it, rather than shoulders dropping, everyone looking at each other and pointing fingers of blame. This is a completely different mentality we have now. And again, it's just wonderful to see. Now today was very different. All the anxieties that we have were all brought back, weren't they? Because you're sort of sitting there thinking it's inevitable the Palace score. But obviously the bottom line is they didn't, and it was our day. We rode our luck a little bit at times, I felt, but I need to say the word before we finish, Matt. I thought James Coleman was absolutely outstanding today, particularly first half. Has a big role to play in the goal, of course, but I just thought he was superb. His positional sense, he knew when to get rid of it. He knew when to sort of drive further forward, and he was getting involved. It was like the Seamus Coleman of old, and he looks like he's thoroughly buying into this as the skipper. Dare I say it, he looks a little bit more gnarly these days as well. We saw his reaction to the sending off from who was it last week, Kieran Gibbs. And this week he just looked just as narky with everybody. He was fighting for things. He was, you know, trying to take time out of the game. It was everything we hoped we'd have in a captain at the club. And if he's buying into it, somebody who's been at the club, you know, in excess of a decade now, it shows you how things are changing.
Yeah, Dave mentioned there, Rob, that Sigurdsson had a really good cameo when he came on. Less so from Alex Iwobi, you think it'd be fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, it was, you know, it was like really short, of course. You know, don't think he made a huge impact. I probably have a harder time formulating opinions about guys who play less than 10 minutes in a game. But yeah, no. You know, I'll say this about Sigurdsson, though. Yeah, I mean, I agree with Dave that he came on and looked good. I don't particularly think there's any reason, you know, compelling reason to start him at this point. If Gomes is going to play, I still think very well and be as good at pressing and be, you know, physical and so on. I'm just not sure that you know, if the answer is Gylfi Sigurdsson, I'm not sure I still am at the point where I like the question. And I don't really, I think it's just because he's got a long way to go to pay back for what I felt like was just a relative lack of industry over the last year or so. But having said that, that's the whole point of competition, isn't it? Is that you have those players who are itching to, you know, impress every time they come on the pitch and do well. And to Dave's point about, you know, players, I think he makes a good point about, you know, if you have some players that don't have as good a game, you have others that can pick them up. I think the other thing I would add to that too is that with a more talented group in midfield too, I would say that sometimes even when one of them is having a bad game, their bad game is still better than the bad game of the person they're replacing. And therefore, you know, even James Rodriguez didn't have a spectacular game, but yet he still played a huge part in our goal. He's going to be that kind of player who's so good that even when he's off, he's still going to affect the outcome of the game. And when you have players like that essentially establish a level or a bar of expectation like that, and you can consistently display it. Again, it's not always about performing great, but it's about finding ways to get the most out of what you've got on the pitch in that 90 minutes. And Everton have done that. I can't believe we're 3-0. And that's, but I shouldn't say that. There's not one game you can look at, even with the struggles today, where you say, oh man, we didn't deserve to win that game. I just don't feel that at all. And so I'm really encouraged by this. And again, two wins out of our 3 away in London. I can't believe I'm saying that either. Now, granted, I know these are not traditional road matches, but I think we've got nothing but reason to be excited and happy about this start.
Wonderful stuff. What's everyone up to tonight then? Big celebrations, takeaway, a few cans, anything like that? Dave Downey's nodding.
Yeah, I'm straight down the offie in a minute, mate. Going to get myself a nice special Charmaine and a bottle or two of the sweet Echo Falls stuff.
Hey, Dave, the Everton Twitter account just tweeted Echo, says, Echo Falls, you guys deliver.
They're finally getting it. Everyone's finally getting it now.
Oh, my God.
It's exciting times.
I got to try this poison next time I'm over.
Exciting times for Echo Falls drinkers and Evertonians everywhere, isn't it? But we'll leave it there. Thanks very much to everyone for watching or listening. If you're watching on YouTube, give us a like. Subscribe, and little button in your bottom right hand corner as you look at the screen. If you're listening to us on iTunes or any platform as well, give us a rating, give us a comment, all that kind of thing. But thanks very much to Rob, Dave, and Mike. Everton, the top of the league yet again on Saturday night. Enjoy it, and we speak to it again very, very soon here on the Blue Room. Nice one.